Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Scottish Open Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into. We're going to take a look at the weather forecast. We're going to take a look at some deep, detailed data surrounding the Renaissance Club and all the players in the field this week. There has been one more field change, so we'll get into that. Got a lot to get into. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytic tools out there. No doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research around the week's tournament. With very limited data surrounding the Scottish Open and did not put anything out there for today. We'll put something out for the ISCO Championship tomorrow. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of recent form and course history. So make sure you are subscribed to his article and go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. Have you made any wagers for the Scottish Open? What do you know of the forecast? What do you know of the course? Want to hear from you all in that regard. Who's your favorite? Who do you think is going to win? Any players early on this week that you're targeting or staying away from? So we are here for everything Scottish Open. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Scottish Open. And we start, as we always do, on a Monday night over at Windfinder. And the extended forecast looks like they are going to be getting hit with a lot of rain tomorrow and into Wednesday, which is probably going to make that course really, really soft, really, really receptive, especially on the greens, although they are going to get pummeled with some wind today and tomorrow as well, tomorrow and Wednesday. We look at the actual tournament forecast. Looks pretty pleasant for Thursday and Friday. A little bit of rain and maybe a little bit of wind on Thursday. Friday looks amazing. Chilly by no means. 55 is a high, but very, very little wind, especially in regards to the what you would expect, I guess, from Scotland and on the coast. And then Saturday and Sunday look very, very calm as well. So apparently this forecast has changed today. It will continue to change, especially since the course sits right on the coast. Looks pretty darn pleasant. And with the amount of rain that is expected to be dropped tomorrow and Wednesday, looking like the course is going to be very, very soft, very, very receptive, and with very little wind. I'm thinking we probably, at least based on this forecast, going to get an easier time of it this week. So with that, we will move to Fantasy National and take a look at the players in the field this week. We talked last night how Patrick Rogers had withdrawn. Earlier today, I did see Beau Hossler had withdrawn from the Scottish Open. So make sure those two players are not in any of your considerations for lineups and such this week. Beau Hossler and Patrick Rogers have withdrawn. But anyway, with what we looked at with Windfinder, we looked at difficult relative to par last night, considering that the forecast probably yielded a lot more wind. Looks like that has changed. I'm actually going to look at easy relative to par. Some of these winning scores have gotten into the 20s around the Renaissance Club when wind has been very cooperative, very benign, and that's what the forecast is calling for so far. And of course, we'll stay on top of that. We'll monitor that throughout the week and update you with the forecast to start Wednesday night's DFS Tactics show. But in the past couple of years and in the last 36 rounds, when rounds have been easy relative to par, our top performers are Xander, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Aubert, Davis Thompson, Justin Thomas, Rory, Chan Kim, Alex Noren, Victor Hovland, and Eric Cole. Again, skipping Patrick Rogers. He has withdrawn. We could take a look at calm wind. I generally don't look at this filter, considering a lot of times when it's calm, it's probably just going to be more on the easier end of the spectrum, and that's why we let off with the easy relative to par filter. But in calm winds, in the past couple of years, our top performers have been Max Homa, Xander, Eric Cole, Tommy Fleetwood, Rory, Tom Hoagie, Tom Kim, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, and Sung Jae. There's your top 10 when winds have been calm in the past couple of years. So with that, we are going to remove the filters. We'll take a look at a couple of different things in the strokes gained page view here in Fantasy National. However, you see that I've got this set for 2022 when Xander won. If I take a look at the strokes gained, we don't get any strokes gained data for in terms of shot types. Nothing 2 years ago. Of course, nothing last year. We're hopeful that the Shot Link will be traveling over there this year and get some strokes gained data. But with nothing to really look at in terms of strokes gained off the tee or approach, we're just going to kind of take a look at a big picture view here on this page view. Just get a feel for who has been the best in a broad sense. So your top off the tee players the past 24 rounds or 3 months, so long as it's been on the PGA Tour. Your top off the tee players: Rory, Minwoo Lee, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Aubert, Davis Thompson, Tom Kim, Alejandro Tosti, and Jordan Spieth. Those are your top 10 off the tee. What I'm much more interested in, let's take a look at approach. We're going to be really narrowing in on this this week, considering the lack of data that we have. I always default to approach players, although we will be putting quite a bit of putting into this as well. But your top approach players in the field this week, the past 24 rounds: Corey Connors, Kevin Yu, Xander, Aaron Rai, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, Tom Hoagie, Sepp Straka, David Skins, and Ben Griffin are your top 10 in the past 24 rounds or 3 months, whichever happens first. But interesting to see David Skins be top 10 in a pretty darn good field. You see the John Deere, even though he missed the cut, the irons were fine. He just missed every single putt on Friday. Rocket Mortgage, he played really well with the irons. RBC Canadian, he was pretty darn solid with his iron. So he's been in very, very good iron form lately. Surprising to see him in the top 10 in this field, but the numbers don't lie. And then last thing we're going to take a look at in terms of strokes gained this evening is putting. We took a look at this last night, but we'll start with the fact of putting in the past, say, we'll go 6 months and 36 rounds, because putting is a very volatile and fickle statistic. It generally takes more for that data to normalize or to become consistent, as opposed to off the tee and approach. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Yep, we're back at it. Thanks for jumping in chat. Whatever little data there is around the Scottish Open, we're going to investigate this week and this evening But admittedly, especially for somebody who is so data-centric like me, there isn't a lot. So whatever we do have, we'll take a look at. But admittedly, this is not my strongest suit. Not the best with European events, considering I don't collect DP World Tour stats. But thanks, as always, for jumping in chat. It's much appreciated. We're going to try to get back on the winning ways, considering a few weeks now for me have been subpar. And you mentioned last night how it was not great for you last week of the John Deere. Our top putters in the past 36 rounds on the PGA Tour, going back essentially to the beginning of the year, maybe not including the Century or the Sony. Our top putters have been Mackenzie Hughes, Denny McCarthy, Taylor Montgomery, who replaced Bo Hostler in the field this week. He was the second alternate to get in. Xander, Thomas Dietrich, S.H. Kim, Seabez, Alexander Bjork, Harris English, and Billy Horschel. Those are your top 10 putters. But what I'm more interested in is taking a look at putting on these very slow greens. Very, very slow greens here at the Renaissance Club. And if they indeed get all of the rain that is in the forecast for tomorrow and Wednesday, I can just see this course being very, very soft, very, very receptive. So on slow greens, in the past couple of years, our top putters have been Denny McCarthy, S.H. Kim, Emiliano Grillo, Sung Jae, Nico Echeverria, Alexander Bjork, Justin Lauer, Adam Scott, Brendan Todd, Justin Rose, and Sam Stevens. Those are your top 10 putters on slow greens. And I'm 95 to 99% sure this is the filter I'm going to use for putting this week in the mixed condition model. Okay, so with that, we'll start digging into some more detailed data. Gosh dang it, I meant to did not want to go to part threes. We're going to go to driving and greens, if you will. And 2022, we have the full statistics except for driver left and driver right. As I mentioned last night, distance isn't necessarily mandatory, but it probably could help a little bit. You see only 4 players negative in terms of distance. The fairways weren't that big of a deal. Now, several of these players are just negative 0.5, not terrible by any means. But the fact that these players weren't so concentrated on hitting the fairways makes me think that we're going to want to focus more on the distance aspect of it. If we sort on distance, decent bit up here, a top 10, several missed cuts from Gallagher, Luke List, Broberg, second Kitayama down here towards the bottom, our winner right at the bottom of your screen, Xander there. So at least in 2022, not a whole lot here. Again, it's more so the fact that more players were just generally positive by a decent amount in terms of distance. Fairways, again, not a big deal. Good drives gained could be something that we might want to look at as well. Greens looks to be pretty solid, as there's really only one player decently into the negative with a minus 1.6. Everybody else was a negative 0.6. And the reason why we're at 2022, if we take a look at last year and Rory in the fairways, we just didn't get any data. So we only have 1 year of driving and greens data to look at. And that's a big reason why I did not make an early look file this week with only essentially 1 year of data, and the course has been played here for a few years. We just didn't feel comfortable limiting or looking at limited data. So based on 2022, I'm thinking probably good drives gained, probably some greens, and these greens are very, very difficult to hit, especially in relation to the average tour event. So, good drives gained, sure. Players are going to be in the fairway. Yeah, maybe. You could argue that one, considering there's only a couple players negative in good drives gained. In fact, if we sort on it, much more correlating. A top 10, a top 25, a third, top 10, top 10, top 30 or middling, winner in the good drives gained. So that could be interesting. Greens, much the same. You don't have a whole lot of missed cuts very high in the missed greens. So we're going to be looking more towards the accuracy portion, definitely. No doubt about that with greens and good drives. I do think we want to lean towards the bombers, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, you look at players like Tommy Fleetwood, who aren't long by any means. Alex Smalley's not long by any means. Well, he can be. He just doesn't putt very well. I should say he's gotten longer, as you see. I don't think distance is absolutely necessary. I don't see it being absolutely mandatory. So we'll take a look at a few things here on this page view. We're going to go with, let's go last 3 months and 24 rounds. Just look at the immediate time frame here. Your top distance players in the past 24 rounds on the PGA Tour: Rory, Ben An, Minwoo Lee, who did win this in 2021. So I did go back and check. Minwoo Lee won in 2021. Aaron Rai won the year before that, 2020 or 2019. I can't remember if it was canceled. So Minwoo Lee, Wyndham Clark, Chris Goddard, Kevin Yu, Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland, Vincent Norman, and Justin Thomas are our top 10 in terms of driving distance in the past 24 rounds. If we take a look at good drives, Aaron Rai, Colin Morikawa, Sepp Straka, Tommy Fleetwood, Joel Damon, Ludwig Aubert, Xander, Eckroat, Grayson Sigg, and Ben Coles. Note that really it's only Ludwig Aubert and Xander who are pretty high in terms of good drives and have the distance. Majority of these good drives gained players are about finding the fairways. So really, Aubert and Xander being elite in this regard, considering they are solid in terms of distance, 15th and 16th, and really honorable mention here to Rory, first in distance, 14th in good drives, decent. I mean, fine with the fairways as well. So interesting to note that. And then your top greens gained players in the last 24 rounds: Rai, Aubert, Ben An, Xander, Thompson, Hovland, Connors, Joel Damon, Rory, and Sepp Straka. Now, considering that there was very, very little wind in the forecast, I still want to think this is going to play easy, but I'm a tad bit cautious on that, only because the forecast is probably going to change from now until Wednesday night when the DFS Tactics show happens, and by the time I make my mixed condition model. So we're just going to take a big picture view, if you will, get a feel for the players that have been performing well in the recency with these metrics. In fact, let's take a look at Rory last year just to get a feel for what he was doing well leading into the Scottish Open. We are there. So Rory, no surprise, ball striking it well. He actually was in very good putting form as well. Interesting to note that. So there's all of the tournaments leading into the Scottish Open and what he was doing well. Of course, off the tee, that's his game. The irons were red hot right now. But he was also putting it well. That's why I've got a pretty good... I have a strong suspicion that we're going to have quite a bit of putting in our mixed condition model. Again, looking at driving and greens, good drives gained, greens. He's always going to be positive in distance. Now, if we could take a look at Xander and what he did, or what kind of form he had 2 years ago winning, since the Masters, lots of irons. The putter was very hot at the Travelers, but he wasn't necessarily as hot as Rory. Looking at, say, distance and greens, take a look at the Scottish. Sorry, trying to match it up on your screen. So good drives, greens. That's where I'm kind of leaning. Maybe 5% in distance, but really it's in the good drives and the greens. Maybe a little bit of both. Right now I'm kind of leaning towards good drives, only because even though the rough isn't difficult to play out of here at the Renaissance Club, if you find the fairway bunkers, they are very, very penalizing. So you still have to be somewhat accurate off the tee. And then these greens, they are very difficult to hit. So I do think it's appropriate to look at the players who are just able to hit greens. So there's a look at those, especially in the good drives gained. That's what I have sorted for you on that. Again, just kind of not feeling any particular filter tonight. Based on the forecast, I don't feel comfortable using the difficult relative to par filter, considering the wind looks like it's going to be laying down quite a bit. At least that's what the forecast has. Not looking at any architect filter. This is a Tom Doak design. Calm winds. Even though this is close to 7,200 yards, it's right over 7,200 yards. It's still only a par 70. So it's a pretty average length par 70 or mid-length par 70. So I'm thinking just probably good drives gained. And that's, there's your top 10, at least in the last 24 rounds with that. We'll get this set for scoring. Not sure how much this is going to help. We'll go to last year's first. Considering 2022 was extremely difficult, so that would lend itself to being to bogey avoidance. However, last year was a bit more benign in terms of conditions, and you see it kind of lended itself to the birdies. Rory especially. If we look at the top, top 18 just due to ties. 2 players negative in each. Not a whole lot to be here. The higher concentration is in the birdies. First, 6, 6, 6, third, 6th. Pretty darn solid. Whereas the bogeys, you got much more cut making and middling finishes to it. So I would lean birdies right now just based on the forecast, but that, again, could change. If we look at 2022 and the birdies gained, this was much more around the bogey avoidance, I would say. Although Xander was high with the birdies gained, but so many more bogey avoidances just due to the terrible conditions 2 years ago here. 3rd, 4th, 16th, 10th. A couple of, lesser finishes. Birdies gained. It's elite at the top, but you actually have a couple of missed cuts pretty high. So we'll take a look at both, but I am more so thinking birdies are better based on the forecast and also opportunities. Kind of thinking about opportunities again, because if indeed the Renaissance Club gets the amount of rain that they're forecast to get tomorrow and Wednesday, course is probably going to be pretty soft. So in the past 3 months or 24 rounds, your top opportunities gained players have been Tom Hoagie, Keith Mitchell, Joel Damon, Tom Kim, Corey Connors, Sammy Valimaki, Brian Harmon, Morikawa, Kevin Yu, Doug Gim, Lucas Glover, and Mac Meisner. If you look at birdies or better with those opportunities, the only players that don't show up really would be Damon and Doug Gim. Very, very poor in birdies or better gained. I think it's probably just best to look at birdies since the Renaissance Club doesn't yield eagles really much at all. 2%, 1.5%, 1%. Not a whole lot of eagles around here. So I'm thinking I'm probably just going to be looking at birdies gained. Would be my assumption early on this week. Your top birdies gained players the past 24 rounds. Of course, Davis Thompson in his almost minus a bajillion last week at the John Deere. Colin Morikawa, Sung Jae, Tom Kim, Andrew Novak, Connors, Hovland, Lauer, Rory, and Xander. And all these players are going to be good in the bogey avoidance as well. The worst being Justin Lauer at 57. But most of these players are good in the bogey avoidance as well. But again, I don't feel comfortable with a filter so far this week until that forecast kind of stabilizes or we get closer to the tournament starting and we have a better idea of how the weather conditions are going to be. So we'll now move, not anything to do with proximity, just nothing to be gained. We have it from 2 years ago, nothing last year. Hard to say. If we sort, total prox doesn't look to be a thing. Look at all these missed cuts pretty high up here. Total prox doesn't seem to be a thing. If we look at the individual ranges, nothing there. Not a whole lot here. You got a top 20 and a top 10, a top 20, but kind of falls off pretty quickly there. Second, fourth, 10th, first falls off a little bit, but 150 to 175, maybe. Not a whole lot here. And the 200 plus, cut making. So if you wanted to argue maybe the 200 plus, I wouldn't fault you for that. I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight into it. But there are several longer par fours. 5 of your 10 par fours are 450 to 500. And we do have a very long par 4, 500 plus. So maybe 200 plus could be something. Maybe. But 2023, we don't know. We didn't get those statistics. So I'm just going to skip proximity. I just don't feel great about it. So we'll go into the par 3s, and it was really surprising last night, considering that there are 5 par 3s here, and yet, wrong way. Yet they did not contribute a whole lot, especially for your top 10s and your top 5s. The winners, they crept up a little bit, but for the winners, the par 5s dominated. So it doesn't appear that there's a whole lot to be gained with these par 3s. Again, which is surprising to me. But you look at the winner 2 years ago, Xander, only a 2. Tom Kim was a 6. He led. Again, you got cut making, but nothing in terms of elite correlation. If we look at a particular range, remember 3 of our 5 par 3s fall to this range. We have 1 here and 1 here. But they play across all of the bucket ranges, so hard to say. It doesn't appear that anything really stands out, especially from 2 years ago. If we take a look at Rory last year, a 3.2, not the best, but you see the extreme correlation up top last year. So this would be more like what I would think, considering there are 5 par 3s. But there doesn't appear to be really a range. I mean, Rory played well on this one particular range, but the range that has the most, he didn't. So looking like it's par 3s, if anything. So our top par 3 performers in the field this week: Xander, EVR, Brian Harman, Skins, Mitchell, Sam Stevens, Wyndham Clark, Ben On, Toasty, and Will Zalatoris. Par 4s should matter a little bit here, although we only have 10 of them, but you see almost all of the top, in fact, every player inside the top 25 was positive on the par 4s. Looks like it is the 450 to 500. That's where the majority, at least last year, of our strokes gained came. Pulkanen, I think is how you say that. Led in that range, but then first, second, top 15, top 20, thirds, sixths. So looks like the 450 to 500 would be the most important range. Look at that for our top performers there. Even Ewan Ferguson with a 5 down here. Sam Burns, Tom Hoagie with a 5. Woodland with a 5. So looks like it was the 450 to 5 last year. If we take a look at 2 years ago in Xander's win, again, a lot up here. But look at the 500 plus. There was a lot to be gained that year. Sort, again, just solid. A little bit less when you sort on it, though. Marcus Kennel, Callum Tarrant missed the cut. Ashton Wu was pretty poor. If we sort on the 500 plus, which there's only one in that range as your more elite correlation. I still think it's the 450 to 5. Our top par 4 performers in the field this week at the Scottish Open: Rory, Morikawa, Rai, Xander, Obear, Tom Kim, Connors, Hovland, Minwoo Lee, Sungjae, and Hideki. Looking at the 450 to 5s, it's Rory, Obear, Rai, Morikawa, Grazerman, Hubbard, Hideki, Xander, Lucas Glover, and Tommy Fleetwood. And then the par 5s are extremely important here at the Renaissance Club. This is where Xander made up a whole ton of his strokes. I mean, look, top, 10th, 10th, first, 6th, 10th, 10th. Middling, or top 25 from Terrell Hatton, a middling to a clunker from Ricky, another top 10, top 50, or top 20. So solid here in the par 5s. And it looks like it was the 600 to 650. That's interesting. They actually had one par 5 play 650 plus 2 years ago. Considering the longest on the scorecard is 600. So they really lengthened it 2 years ago. My guess would be still the 550 to 6, but if we take a look at last year's, yeah, it's just the 600 to 650 it looks like. And even Rory played them well. Ben Martin was middling, and then first, 6, top 15, top 25. So the par 5s are going to have a good amount of weight. So our top par 5 performers, and in fact, I'm just going to kind of go straight to the 600 to 650, I think. Our top par 5 performers from 600 to 650 this in the past 24 rounds: Ryan Fox, Rory, Chan Kim, Max Grazerman, Christian Bezuidenhout, Ludwig Obear, Sam Stevens, Jason Scrivener, Charlie Hoffman, Rai, Fitzpatrick, and Pavone. All right, I'll bring this back to strokes gained, and let's go ahead and dig into some more data around the Renaissance Club, whatever we can find. We take a look at some detailed data around the Renaissance Club. Again, we only have the data for the past 2 years, and we're limited with the driving statistics. So really, the driving statistics, we only have 1 year of data. See, the distance really didn't play too much of a factor. This good drives gained number is fairly high. If we go down a row, good drives gained would be 35%, but again, it's only 1 year. So you don't want to put a whole lot into that, but that is a pretty darn solid number there. So that's why I'm leaning towards that. We look at scoring. Again, the bogeys was much more important 2 years ago when the weather conditions were just atrocious. They look more benign, and even last year with some benign conditions. Birdies gained and bogey avoidance weren't all that strong, neither one of them, and that's why I'm kind of leaning towards opportunities. Again, the bogey avoidance is getting, I think, artificially propped up from 2022 when it was just so darn difficult due to the wind. So I'm more so looking at opportunities gained, maybe 5% in birdies gained, but I don't see too much here. We move to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Yeah, look at the par 3s here. 1.7 is a pretty decent number. 20%. That's what I would have thought with 5 par 3s. That's what I would have thought. But there doesn't seem to appear to be a range. If there is one, it is the 200 to 225. But, you know, the 175 to 200, even though they didn't play any to them last year, was still fairly high 2 years ago. 0.65 out of a 1.7 is, you know, a little over a third. So not enough to warrant looking at them on their own. Looking just like kind of par 3s in general. Just kind of par 3s in general. We move to par 4s, and this number is pretty low. Despite the correlation we saw in the prior leaderboards, this number is actually pretty low. This is 8% less than the average full field course. Looking like it's the 450 to 5. Look how consistent it was the past 2 years. Now last year, the 400 to 450 actually were something too. So, interesting. But as of right now, basically 50%, half of our strokes gained in par 4s come between 450 and 5. So that would probably signify wanting to look at this range a little bit by itself. And then the par 5s, indeed, is all in the 600 to 650, which is interesting because there's 2 on the scorecard that measure to here, 1 to here. But you can't deny how much the percentage of the strokes gained, about 75 to 80% in the 600 to 650 in these par 5s. So kind of looking at that in terms of par 5s here at the Renaissance Club. Again, very limited data, but we have, can only go by what we have. So with that, we're going to actually finalize the show this evening looking at my mixed condition model. This was 2 years ago. No, this was last year. What am I doing? So let me get this prepped and see how predictive it was, how good results based it was. Well, you see that I had 5 missed cuts in my top 20. It's okay. It's a little bit on the high side, but okay, I suppose. Winner was 3rd. So, sure. Yeah, he was pretty popular, but sure. Let's see. Tommy, a fairly unique Max Homa. Justin Thomas wasn't all that great. Putnam was very unique, kind of middling. So kind of expected in terms of by these ownerships to what happened. So if I sort on this, and you see all the blanks just due to the DP World Tour players, and it's going to be the same this year because I don't collect DP World Tour stats. If we sort, and then let me put the average in here. So if we go down to what? Anybody who's finished inside the top 25, just very convenient cutoff there. For the Renaissance Club, hey P, good evening. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a good John Deere Classic. Much better than mine. Enjoyed your July 4th grilled out. Enjoyed some fireworks wherever you were. Thanks for jumping in chat as always. So we have 152 players, but that's a little bit misleading considering how many blanks from players that are on the DP World Tour that play in this. So I'm kind of looking for something in the high to mid 30s probably. So we see approach was solid. It was okay. Bogey avoidance wasn't all that great. Again, we only had actually, let me back up. What did we look at? I had 15% approach. That makes a whole lot of sense. We only had 1 year of data, and it was very, very difficult that year. So bogey avoidance was all I had to go on. Makes a lot of sense. Bogey avoidance when difficult. I looked at good drives gained. I used the difficult relative to par, again, thinking that it was going to be extremely difficult with only 1 year of data. But I do like the fact that I look at good drives gained. I used 10% around the green. I don't think that was correct. Even though scrambling here is a lot less than, or players are a lot less successful scrambling here than they are at the average tour event, I think a lot of that comes down to putting. So I'm not too keen on the idea of around the green this week. I had 10% in par threes. Yeah, okay. 10% par fours, 10% par five. So feeling like I didn't know which way I wanted to go last year. I just kind of focused on 2 or 3 metrics and then rounded it out with 3s, 4s, and 5s. I did have 3-putt avoidance on Velcro. Okay, I would just go putting in that regard. And I did separate out the 450 to 500 par 5 or par 4s 5%. So how predictive were they? Like I said, the approach was okay. Bogey avoidance wasn't great at a 46. Good drives gained was bad in terms of predictability. But again, remember these two, I used the difficult relative to par filter, and it didn't play difficult last year, so that could have thrown it off. 50 and around the green, that's not good, but I think that was an error on my part. Par 3s, 4s, par 5s were okay. Actually, 3-putt avoidance was fairly predictable. 35. And then this range of par 4s was lackluster. So we got a lot to improve on for this year's Scottish Open. Again, no early look file, no research posted today, considering the very limited amount of data surrounding the Genesis Scottish Open. But that's going to be it for the show. I'll bring us back to, let's just kind of take a look at let's get a look at some course data as we round out the show. But that's going to be it for the show this evening. A little bit of limited data, but we covered everything that we have access to. And then Wednesday night, we're going to try and finalize our player pools, figure out which angles we want to take for the Renaissance Club this week, figure out what the forecast is going to do. Seems like it's been fairly chaotic. It looks like it's going to be pretty wet tomorrow and Wednesday. I appreciate that, Pete. Thanks. Hope you had a good 4th as well. It's good to see you. Thanks for jumping in chat. So hopefully I'll catch you here sometime else. Don't forget that with this being a double tournament week, I will be live tomorrow night as well for the alternate field event. But it was good to see you in chat this evening, P. But yeah, we're going to try and get back on some winning ways. It's been a little while for me. I've had a few rough weeks in a row. So we're going to try to turn our fortunes around with some limited data around the Scottish Open. But alternate event down in Nicholasville, Kentucky, pretty local to me. So looking forward to digging into that. Luke Clanton is actually the amateur favorite in a PGA tournament. Quite interesting. But thanks to Darnell and P for jumping in chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at golf statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. No, I am not going to it. I have 2 baseball games during the week, one Thursday and one Saturday. Kind of eats into any free time for me. My buddies and I have been casually throwing the idea out to play in the Pro-Am as a scramble team, but we have not committed to that yet. We're not doing it this year, but no, I will not be going to that, unfortunately. Will be nice to check it out sometime, but again, I'm just baseball. My baseball season is kind of taking over right now. Reminder that I will be live tomorrow for the ISCO Championship. The title sponsor used to be the Barbasol. They are no longer the title sponsor, so it's the ISCO Championship. It's played at the same course, Keene Trace in Nicholasville, Kentucky. I will be live for the research, data, and DFS for the alternate field event tomorrow. So make sure you set your reminders that I will be live at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow again. Thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Scottish Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Scottish Open, and until I see you tomorrow night for the ISCO Championship full show, may all your bets be profitable.